Across consecutive nights this week, protesters in Albania have rallied against a huge coastal development backed by Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law. The multi-billion-dollar Trump family-linked project is supported by Albanian Prime Minister Edi Rama as part of his bid to turn the Balkan country into a major high-end tourist destination. But concerns about the project's impact on the area's once-protected ecosystem, as well as corruption and the selling off of land, has fueled the protest movement, dubbed the Flamingo Revolution, for the use of imagery of the protected species in the protests. The story is about more than one luxury resort. It ties together billionaire money, protest, environmental protection, and even Albania's EU aspirations and economic vision. So, in this video, we're going to explain Kushner's controversial development, the protest movement against it, and why it's bad news for Edi Rama. European politicians don't really talk about the energy transition anymore, but that doesn't mean it isn't happening. In fact, Europe has quietly redoubled its effort at decarbonisation. In the latest issue of our magazine, we look at this rare good news and why the energy transition has ended up looking different to the one we envisioned. That's just one of 80 pages in the magazine, because there's more in Too Long than you'd expect. Purchase your copy by clicking the link in the description. So, let's start by taking a look at Kushner's development project to understand why it's so contentious. In 2024, Kushner's private equity firm Affinity Partners announced that it planned to develop a luxury resort on the Albanian coast. The venture has two main components, one being a $4.7 billion coastal development along the Vjosa Nata protected landscape, and the other, a $1.4 billion resort on the nearby uninhabited island of Sazan, a former military base. The project apparently has the potential for up to 10,000 hotel rooms. Ivanka Trump, Kushner's wife and Donald Trump's daughter, revealed on a podcast they'd fallen in love with the area while on a sailing trip on a friend's boat. In late 2024, the Albanian government granted Atlantic Incubation Partners LLC, an affiliate of Kushner's Affinity Partners, strategic investor status, giving it access to fast-track approval procedures. The planned development has sparked significant environmental opposition, particularly as it's been made possible by a 2024 change to the law that lifted restrictions on tourism developments. For reference, the stretch of coastal lands marked for development sits between the Mediterranean Sea and the Nata Lagoon. According to conservationist organisation BirdLife International, the area shelters over 70 endangered species and more than 200 bird species, including flamingos and Dalmatian pelicans. The surrounding waters are a refuge of the Mediterranean monk seal, one of the world's rarest seals, and a nesting ground for the loggerhead sea turtle. In January, 41 environmental groups signed a letter to Albanian Prime Minister Edi Rama calling for the immediate suspension of any decisions advancing the project on the country's pristine coastline. There has evidently been opposition to the luxury resort project for some time now, but things have intensified in recent weeks, as heavy machinery and workmen have moved in to build access roads, a barbed wire fence has been erected, and private security hired to guard the coastal site. Tensions have flared further, as videos have gone viral showing the private security guards clashing with protesters. Demonstrations have also been taking place in the Albanian capital Tirana, with thousands gathering on Thursday night for the fifth consecutive night of large-scale protests against the development. The flamingo has emerged as a symbol of the protests, as the pink-wading bird is one of those threatened by the planned development, leading to the movement being dubbed the Flamingo Revolution. Beyond the environmental concerns, there are also accusations of corruption and disputes over the ownership of the land, complicated by Albania's messy post-communist privatisation of land in the 1990s. Alongside the flamingo placards, some protesters held signs stating that Albania is not for sale. Albania's special independent anti-corruption body, SPAK, has launched an inquiry into the controversial 2024 legislative changes to protected lands and the ownership of the land. And on Tuesday, amid the ongoing protests, anti-corruption prosecutors froze the assets of a land-holding company tied to the project. Now, Prime Minister Edi Rama has been a staunch defender of the planned development, even as he has condemned the behaviour of some of the private security guards. Rama has insisted that development and nature can coexist, while saying that young protesters have been misled and that it will be good for local people and Albania's economy by bringing jobs, investment and wealthy tourists. For context, Albania, under the idiosyncratic communist rule of Enver Hoxha, was effectively closed to outside visitors. Since Hoxha's death in 1985 and the transition to democracy in the early 1990s, travel and tourism have become a huge pillar of the Albanian economy. However, Edi Rama argues that Albania needs to enter the, quote, Champions League of global tourism by moving from mass tourism to a more exclusive, high-end and big-spending market. Rama said Albania should not be a country that fears an extraordinary project like this one, where exceptional partners have come together to invest €4 billion, adding, there is no chance for this investment to stop as long as I am here. For protesters going up against Jared Kushner, Ivanka Trump and co., their billions of dollars and a determined Albanian government, it's a pretty daunting task. However, there are several reasons not to count them out. For starters, the nature of the protests are pretty remarkable. Albania expert Gresa Hasa said, this movement is unprecedented in Albania's post-communist history. Without the support of any political party, they're building an independent grassroots movement driven by citizen-led mobilisation. These are mainly young people, most of whom are under 30. The protesters can also look to Serbia, which recently went through a remarkably similar episode. Kushner's firm was seeking to build a luxury hotel in Belgrade on the site of a bombed-out military complex with designated heritage status. The project was dropped after Serbian prosecutors charged 4 individuals, including the Serbian culture minister, with abuse of office and falsifying documents for allegedly illegally removing the building's heritage status. Furthermore, there's the potential for international pressure to help boost the protesters' cause. The primary political project of Edi Rama's now 4th term in office is to take Albania into the European Union by 2030. The European Commission has said it is closely following the developments in relation to the controversial project and was concerned about the possible environmental impacts, particularly in protected areas of Albania's repeated extension of its strategic investment law. Moreover, in a recent press conference with Edi Rama, European Council President Antonio Costa avoided commenting directly on the case, but stressed that Albania's accession process depends on aligning and implementing its environmental legislation fully with the EU's body of law. The saga has also damaged Albanian relations with neighbouring Greece. After a Greek national was injured during clashes with security guards at the development site, the Greek Foreign Ministry voiced strong concern and said, "We stress the need for full adherence to the rule of law, including the protection of the rights and the property of members of the ethnic Greek minority, as well as the importance of effectively protecting environmentally protected areas in line with European practice," further noting that this is a precondition of EU accession. For now, though, Edi Rama appears resolute in defending the luxury development, while protesters continue to rally against it. The latest issue of our magazine is out now, and if you want our best value ever, subscribing and using code SUMMER26 gets you your first copy for as cheap as £4.99, as well as 20% off as long as you stay subscribed. I told you about one of the articles at the start of this video, but this issue's truly jam-packed with content from all around the world. Obviously, the headline section is our rundown of Trump's wars around the world, discussing all of the different countries and regions which have faced Trump's military wrath, going nation by nation through the timeline, and reaching the ultimate question, has Trump created the modern holy war? From there, we dive into our regional sections, starting with the UK, where we unpack the results of the recent elections, take a look at the UK's odd foreign posture, and discuss if Britain has become ungovernable. Then, in the EU section, we discuss how Russia's sphere of influence is fading, why Europe's energy transition isn't what you expect, as well as looking at the Euro's missing members. Finally, in the global section, we discuss if we're seeing echoes of the First World War, what's next for Iran, as well as what really came from the Gen Z protests we saw emerging last year. That's not even everything. With this 80-page issue, our joint longest ever, there's even more to read than I've even been able to mention here. So click the link in the description to learn more and grab your copy today.